You're listening to the Grown and Growing podcast with Sonia and Roberta. What's up, y'all? This is part 2 of our episode on spirituality. We're picking up right where we left off. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, start there. All right, let's get into it. Like, for instance, right, you just mentioned ancestors. Now, to some people, ancestors are just people who have died who used to be here and they're not here anymore. Or ancestors can be described as spiritual guides or people who are here with us spiritually and have something to say. Like, what role do ancestors play when you think about God and ancestors? How do they interplay in your mind?
I have an answer from the perspective of a practitioner of like an African traditional religion, which is like hoodoo. So, but before I get into that, I feel like these type of questions also, I feel like they should remind us that a lot of what we know about religion as colonized people was told to us by colonizers. Mm-hmm. So, like the fact
that wanted to keep us in line.
Absolutely. And the fact that they told us these things like should never be forgotten. I feel like that should be a constant point that is brought up, so we are always questioning and pushing back what is authentic, what is of God and what's not. And to me, that is one of my like biggest points of contention with a lot of like these Black evangelical Christians out here, is that they just take what we were told about religion and Christianity, and for them it's law. Like you can't even review or reassess like anything. So in terms of like where do ancestors play a role, is you also have to look at history. Like before colonization, just about every indigenous community has some type of religious or spiritual practice that honor their ancestors. Like that is a fact. Like you.
And what is the purpose of honoring ancestors?
So honoring ancestors is one, to maintain the cycle of like spirituality of life, like of birth, life, and death. And also understanding that in life, we have access and exposure to things, but also in death, our ancestors also have access and exposure and views of things that we can't comprehend. Mm-hmm. And at least in the African traditional religions, the point of ancestors is one, to maintain the health of your like spiritual lineage, because there are a lot of traditions that believe that the dead and the yet to be born are in the same place. You know what I'm saying? So
is like that heaven?
Some will call it heaven. Yeah, some traditions have other like words for it. But the point is, like, as the person who's alive, when you tend to your ancestors, you sort of keep that cycle of blessings, honor, health, goodwill, prosperity, and stuff going. Mm-hmm. So in terms of like where your ancestors come in terms of and like why some people honor our ancestors, is the fact that Protestant Christianity has told us that like there is nothing between you and God.
Right.
Like absolutely nothing. And and even when you think about your relationship to God, you are like way down here and like God is up here. And to come in contact with God, you got to do certain things. You got to be a certain person. You got to go to a certain place. You got to like offer certain like whatever to be in God's presence.
Well, I have to, because in the Christianity I was brought, Jesus came, he died for our sins. The Holy Ghost is there so that you have direct connection to God and that you don't have to do all of the things that they had to do in the Old Testament to seek God. Now you have this direct relationship. You're able to go to him directly, right? So I don't know if all of those other things are there. Now, when it comes to how you're living your life and if you're worthy of accessing God, that's different. But I do think that we are able to have a direct relationship with God and talk to him directly.
Tomato, because there's some people who don't, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like, I'm the type of person, like, I never push back on what somebody believes. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, if that's what you believe, that's great. There are people who are just like, you know what, but I got to do a whole bunch of stuff to call the Holy Spirit down here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just can't go and like, set out a candle and a glass of water and like pray. And then like the Holy Spirit knocking on my door, like, hey girl, what's up? So like my point is like, due to Christianity's indoctrination, like there have been placed a lot of like barriers, be they ritualistic or whatever, between like, the person and God. Where ancestors come in is that ancestors tend to play the intermediary or intercessory role for Black people, for people who honor their ancestors. It also is a way to ground yourself like spiritually. And then there's also a way to like honor the traditions that we were forced to walk away from. So whether you're like, you're Afro-Caribbean, or you're in South America, or you are African or Pacific, islander, whatever, a lot of colonized communities have maintained some type of ancestral like practice, and either they fuse it into Christianity or they keep it separate. But I personally feel like, as a person of color and a person who's from a line of enslaved people, there ain't nothing no religion could make me do to just like pretend my ancestors don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Roberta?
I agree with pretty much everything Emmanuel just said. I think my relationship is with just, I'll just say spirit before I get into specifically ancestor, right? Well, let me just say the different from my perspective of the difference between the two. I think all souls exist. The four of us are here now. We're spirits, but we're in physical, human form. I feel like once you transition, from out of human form, your spirit is still around and exists. It's still here. I feel the difference between what I kind of see that versus an ancestor. I would say an ancestor is part of our soul network. I believe personally that we all have networks of souls, that we all travel together at all times. And sometimes we're in human form at the same time, sometimes we're not, but we're all connected. I feel like the four of us are connected spiritually, so on a soul level. And for ancestors and for, I'll just say like specifically like familial connections, right? There's a kind of a tighter circle of those like soul connections. It's not and I think some people use this term like ancestors, honoring your ancestors. And some people I think misconstrue it for like worship, and like put like ancestors as like a deity or something. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that just in general, like that one spirit has more weight or importance than another. I just don't. I think there's more that kind of know my soul and my spirit better than others. And so they may have advice or, protection maybe for my spirit more so than another. But I also don't believe that, not every ancestor or spirit is in a place to be protecting or guiding me. Not all spiritual energy is light and airy and just out. There's some that are still weighted. Yeah, there's still just some. And I had actually a medium tell me years ago, because I asked like, who are my spirit guides? Who are the people that surround me? And my father is one, primarily in times of my like emotional like emergencies, if you will. But there's things that he's still atoning for, specifically with my mother. And, until she gets to the point where she transitions and they have an opportunity, he has an opportunity to atone for whatever those things were. And I got some insight into those things. Then, he has some weight to him, to his spirit. And so I take all of these things into consideration again, and like how I incorporate my spirituality. It's more on a day-to-day, moving day-to-day decision level. Is, I don't take things so seriously, you know what I mean? As far as life and death, especially compared to what I used to be. I used to be terrified of death. I'm still a little scared of dying, I'm still kind of scared of like my body, what that process will be for my physical form and my body. But as far as what happens to my spirit and my soul beyond that physical death, child, I ain't worried about that. Actually, I'm actually looking forward to it. So it's very different, I think. And when I have these conversations with Christians, of all the religions and the people who have religions that I talk to and have, share my beliefs with, it's the Christians that are the least understanding of where I'm coming from, which is weird to me, but I kind of get it. I don't know. But to answer your question, yeah, I do have a place for spirit. I do have a place for ancestor. I personally think that just the term ancestor has in the last, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years gotten a little trendy more so than I think it should. And it's tracking let me just say, in the wrong direction.
What direction is it?
I think people are kind of using it again to kind of substitute a deity.
Well, I mean, I know Yadira has a really good answer for this, but I will say, like, in some traditions, the collective ancestry is treated like a deity. And, like, they're respected for, like, their knowledge and experience and the fact that they are closer to knowing our destiny than we are. So, like, in some cases, in some practices, that is the case. And I feel like we all have to do our internal work in terms of, like, how we, one, if that relates to us, because if it doesn't, ain't a big deal. But then two, it's just like, what about that is uncomfortable to you? And like, is that something based on your own personal experience or something you picked up from like other religions or like other people? And I'm not saying like, either one of those examples fit you, but those are the type of questions and the type of wrestling that I've had to do, what I'm saying, with myself, and genuinely just being like, why do I feel like this is bad? And I've come to learn that, like, in terms of being a hoodoo practitioner and like knowing people who practice other African religions, like, your ancestors will answer your prayers before God will.
And let me be clear. I don't think it's wrong for people to honor ancestors or to do any of that. I think it's wrong when people jump on a trend or do something because they heard something sounds like the right way to go versus chasing it through for themselves.
Yadira, you've been quiet.
I have. I was letting my fellow.
She's stewing though. She ready to cook over there.
Yeah, I think part of why I have become more open to ancestors and people that have transitioned is because of my age, right? And I think it might have something to do with our generation. The more that you see people transition over and the more experiences you have to understand that you're not disconnected just because they died, then the more that opens up your mind. Wait a minute, there's something there. I cannot deny the experiences that I have had, right, on a personal level. So I think that has helped me understand that there is a role, that these folks are still part of my life, and that many times they still want to communicate, And I was raised to be fearful of that. I am no longer fearful of that. In my spiritual seeking and seeking those answers that we want, I have learned so much about my own soul and the transitions that it has done. I've done, like meditations for past life regressions. And I have seen, like Roberta mentioned, how I've been connected to some of my family members, not only in this lifetime, but in past lifetimes. To the point where one time I told my dad, when I see you in heaven, I'm going to hop over whoever's sitting in between us, and I'm going to come and sit next to you. And he's like, oh, you're not going to see me. How you know you're going to end up in heaven and you're going to see me? I'm going to...
That. You won't see me there.
Yeah, little faith.
They're Pentecostal, so they think they're the only ones that are right, okay?
Right.
So I said, I'm going to see you there, and I'm going to sit next to you because I will know that soul no matter where it is. And I feel like with my sister, the same thing. I have been around this, and I do tell her now, I'm very open about it. I'm like, in this lifetime, I'm not going to do that. Maybe in the next one, But I am open about that because I am well spiritually connected. And some people that are transitioning want to connect with me. I don't know why. Especially mothers, when they want to communicate with their children here. I do not know why this happens, but very often they come to me for that.
How does that... So Sonia, being the infant of the three and having the most, because I do have the most questions. I mean, I do think there are, with spirituality that God can be seen in many ways, right? He is in nature. He is, and to be honest, I feel the closest to God when I'm outside. When I am in nature, there is no beauty, there's no color that is replicated in nature by man. And so to me, I just feel like I just feel closer to God when I am outside, when I'm connected to earth and trees and seeing the beauty of what is around me, right? And the magnificence of this earth that we live on. But it is a lot. And I do realize that I have work to do to, like you said, Emmanuel, like logically, I do understand what has happened with colonization and how Christianity was introduced to us from a logical standpoint. But I don't think that I have really process that in a spiritual level. Like, what does that mean for me spiritually? And what does it mean to unpack something that I have spent most of my life being around, and not even in a negative way, right? What does it mean to unpack that and develop something new? And how do I start that? And where do and how do I go through the motions of trying to rectify that and come to a place where I feel comfortable? Because I will say, having you guys talk about spirits and the spiritual realm, it sounds great. It sounds beautiful. It sounds like, something that is, like, how could that be bad? But there's also a part of me that, when I think back to how I was taught, that is like, that is bad. That's the devil, trying to confuse you. And, those voices are still there, even though I know that there is more to this spirituality thing than what is in a book or than what we've been taught. Because even the teachings of Jesus don't really align with the way Christians present themselves today, right? And just being an adult and just having lived, to me, I just have more compassion. I have more understanding. I have the belief that God made everybody. And so regardless of how they present themselves, they are worthy to be loved. They are worthy to be here. And they should have everything that I have and more, right? Like, everybody should be equal to the same thing. And so I want to build on that to say, okay, well, where do I stand spiritually and find that place of comfort that I can rest in and be secure in?
But I feel like it starts with asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
But not being tied to what the answer looks like or what the answer is. And I feel like that's what I've learned from leaning more into my spirituality, transitioning out of organized religion, because people in church, like, they would tell you, like, it's a very, like, confined, concise script for how God is and behaves. Like, they'll tell you on one hand, God is the whole universe and knew the number of your hairs on your head before you was even born. But it'd be like, but he's only a man. He's only a he. You can only see him here. So it's just like, I feel like going back to an earlier point of, like, the personal side of religion, like, that's when you just have to. And it's great to be aware that you have those questions. But then you also just have to, like, not be attached to, like, what the answers look like. Because the answer could literally, like, rock your world. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know. But it's like, that's for the best. And I also feel like that's why we all need to ask ourselves, like, and, like, question, like, the macro pillars that have, like, shaped, like, not just what we believe in, like, but, like, how we believe. Like, going to our earlier point or discussion about ancestors, like, I literally had to sit down one day and just be like, why did the colonizers need to try to convince us that our ancestors were demons? Because that's not a belief we had before we met them. Like, there's, like, no proof of that whatsoever. But now, why is it that our ancestors, and specifically Black ancestors...
Do white people have ancestors, don't they? They just don't?
Yeah, because they're alive. They have ancestors, but they don't, like, honor them and look to them, like, for spiritual guidance. And I have an example of that. Because, on the side, I'm like, a medium. I'm, like, reading people, helping people spiritually. But one day I was giving a intro to tarot class because, like, I learned tarot, but also know, like, multiple forms of divination. And I had a very diverse class. I had about 10 people, and I had men, women, black, white, Asian, tall, short, skinny, whatever. I'm going through my manual talking about, like, not everyone reads tarot the same. Some people connect with different types of spirits, be they spirits of nature, angels, ancestors, whatever. And this white woman just, like, jerks up. She's just like, I'm not asking my ancestors for anything. They weren't shit when they were alive, and they're probably not shit in death.
Well, if I had ancestors like that, I wouldn't be like, hey, ancestors.
That is funny to me.
That's a good point, because from what we know of history, and I've contended with that being of mixed heritage, right? I know that I have white ancestry, and I do not often connect with those, nor do I seek those out.
Mm-hmm.
Deal
And
with it.
I already know
I
what they did.
So
I know what they did.
right, and I
Now,
Yeah.
respect that. I
now
respect
there's
that.
one, I gotta say, there's one that has shown up to me in my dreams, and I think that I need to do more digging and even
Uh-huh.
asking about him in particular, because I can tell that he presents himself to help healing, to
Yeah.
help for healing, and I have to understand what that means.
Okay.
Uh,
You have to understand what it means for you guys to have these spiritual experiences. Like you've all
mm,
have talked about, mentioned, when I have this spiritual experience, when I do this,
mm-hmm.
what is that? Describe to me, if you don't mind sharing, if it's not super, something you want to hold close, like what you would describe as a spiritual experience.
Yeah, dear, you want to
I,
go? Roberta, you want to go?
I
Now go,
have
Roberta.
I have two different types of spiritual experiences. One came by way of a medium, and it really shifted me. I mean, I knew what medium, their roles, and I believed that, okay, potentially this could be a thing, like they could communicate. It wasn't until Andrew passed that it solidified, oh, this is real. So she gave me a specific message that there was no way that anyone, like, so I'll tell you exactly what it was. So he was in hospice. I was not with him in hospice when he actually passed. His parents were with him. It was during COVID, so only two people could go at a time. So his parents were with him. They called me and was like, he's officially, he's gone, he's transitioned. I called her immediately because she did tell me, I mean, she knew he was going to pass. And she said, call me when it happens. And so I did. She said two things to me. She was like, he wants you to keep wearing the necklace. So actually, before I called her, so he, coming out of hospice, I took all of his belongings, which included his jewelry, which is a necklace that he wore every single day of his life. When his father called me and said he had passed, I got up and I got the necklace and I put it on. Then I called her and she said, he wants you to keep wearing that necklace. He wants you to keep it. And if anybody asks for it, don't give it to them. He wants you to keep that necklace. And I'm like, how the hell does she know that I had on this necklace and like anything about this whole thing? So that was one piece. And then she was like, did you guys have a dog? And I'm like, no, we didn't have a pet. She was like, I don't know what this means, but he's like, he wants you to keep the dog. And then I had to think about it. And there was a stuffed animal that in the hospital, from hospital to hospice, they gave him because he kept pulling at his tubes and the things and everything that was attached to him. The nurses gave him this little stuffed animal dog to distract him so he would stop pulling out everything. And so when they moved him from hospital to hospice, I took the dog, with him and I propped it up kind of on top of his bed, kind of like his guard dog or whatever. And I would talk to him about the guard dog and we named it and the whole thing while he was in hospice. And she told me that he wanted me to keep the dog. And so there was just very specific things that happened that only, you know what I mean? Like that she didn't know him personally. She barely knew me personally. She was a friend of a friend. She's in North Carolina. We're in like Maryland. There was such detail that she gave me and other specific things. Those are just two examples of what she told me in that conversation. There's other things that there's no way that, like, you know what I mean? Unless that came directly from him. And that just made me, it felt very relieved that he wasn't actually gone. He's still here. It made me a little freaked out. I'm like, well, shit, can he see me doing everything right now?
Well,
But that was a very spiritual.
oh, so you know about your house, Roberta.
I mean, well, but that was a very spiritual thing. That's one thing. That's one example. The other example I have of my personal experiences that I get what I call, which I learned other people call downloads. And it's very quick snippets of information that I just receive. And it honestly takes me and my human brain time to parse out what exactly the message is and what I'm supposed to take away from it. But it comes to me, and when I tell you it's so different than anything, any knowledge that I've accumulated or received any other way, it's a knowing. It's not even a question form. It's not even a like, oh, I wonder what that, no, it's a knowing. And it's very strong. And it's usually accompanied by this overwhelming feeling of like joy, of like just like boundless love and joy and support and just being wrapped. And it comes like, usually I know that it's coming on because I get that feeling. And the only thing that my physical body knows to do is just weep. And then I get the information and then it's done. And all this happens in a matter of seconds. And I've had that happen enough times in my life that I just know that that is a spiritual experience for me. And also I've leaned into it enough and like reached out to other people and learned that other people have very, very similar experiences that I'm like, there has to be something there. Those are my two personal spiritual experiences.
Who else wants to share?
I can share. I've had many, so I'm going to pick kind of like how they happen. One of the simplest ways that I think Christians can understand is when you receive a prophetic word at the church. That knowing that Roberta is talking about, I feel exactly like that. It can either be a message or my presence or a hug or somebody needs something. Somebody needs to be remembered in this moment. And I'm the one that has to text. I'm the one that has to make sure I reach out. That. Right? And it might be somebody that I haven't spoken to in years. And they give me the confirmation, oh my God, you don't understand how much I needed this at this moment. Right? So that's one way. Two, I am a person that typically does not remember her dreams. So the times that I have dreamt with ancestors in particular, they're very vivid. I know what they look like. I know their skin tone. I know their height. I know their age, like all of that from a dream that I typically don't remember dreams, but these stories I do remember clearly. So that's another way. And then the third way is kind of like when you're meditating and you're hearing your thoughts and you're wondering, is that me? Is that? I know that that's not me.
I'm about to say, I always know that ain't me.
Well, see, exactly. So you have that too.
Yeah.
To me, it's like I had one uncle pass away in COVID, and we used to be like tight at a point in our lives. And I was very sad that I couldn't see him or that I had been so far away from him. And I was crying. Nobody else knew. I'm here in my bed and I'm not trying to disturb Elvin, you know. And he comes, visits, and he says, do not cry for me. And he said what he used to call me. That's not my name. Right? So I'm like, okay, that's him. And he sees my sadness over him and he doesn't want me to agonize over that. Right? So I think that those are the ways that I've been able to have those exchanges. Oh, and the last one, this is pretty interesting because I never met this person. Elvin's brother, who passed away way before we met, he came and spoke to me. And I asked, because it was a message for Elvin. He wanted me to talk to Elvin about something. I asked, how's he going to know that it's, how would I know that it's you? Like, how would he know? Because we never met. Like, why would I be sharing this information? And he told me, tell him I'm the triangle. Tell him I'm the triangle. And I was like, okay, that made no sense whatsoever to me. But when I told Elvin that, he knew exactly why he would say that. Because he's like, my brother used to always call me the square. And I was like, how would I know? How could my brain make that up? So.
Interesting. Emmanuel, I know you got some stories. Some examples.
In like different capacities too. Like I'm a big dreamer. Like, and as I just started to like accept this path that I've been put on, I used to feel so insecure because like I bought into a whole bunch of westernized like views of what being spiritual is, what it looks like, and all like the lingo, terminology, and stuff. And my experience didn't fit that. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't going around saying like I'm clairaudient and Huxtable and clairvoyant and like and I'm a medium. It's like I just never felt like that fit me. But the whole time, like I'm literally having dreams about coworkers. You know what I'm saying? Like and like seeing them in like prophetic situations. And having dreams about relatives and seeing their children before they were born. And one day when I was just kind of like, okay, this is kind of it. This is my life now. I was on the bus in Chicago heading home from work, taking the number 3. And this woman is just like staring at me on the bus. Like did not like look away. And I'm just looking at my phone, but she just would not stop staring at me. So I'm thinking she's reading my t-shirt or something, or maybe I look like someone, she knows. So eventually she's just like, excuse me. And I'm just like, okay, like, yes, And she was just like, do you interpret dreams? And I just kind of gasped because like over the past years, I had just been interpreting my own. I never interpreted anybody else's. I wasn't even telling people that I was having all these prophetic and vivid like dreams. And all I knew is the best way I can explain it is like, I just felt like there were like 100 people behind me looking at me, seeing what I was going to say, what I was going to do. And I knew I had to say yes. And I was just like, yeah, I do. And she was like, oh, I knew it. Can I tell you about a dream I had? So at this point, people on the bus are just kind of turning around, like, like, what's happening? And
Go
she
ahead,
literally,
Rosa.
I know, right? Right. And she literally tells me her dream, and I instantly knew what the dream was about. And she was like, oh my God, like that has been like driving me, that has literally been stressing me all day. And she's like, thank you so much. And my bus literally just like pulls up to my stop, and I'm just like, you're welcome. And I get off the bus, and I was just like, okay, this is like, this is real. So
that's pretty undeniable. That's like
it's undeniable.
clear.
And it also, for me, like it colors my connection to being a spiritual person, because I have been thrust into spiritual service. Like from like, I mean, like now I just kind of know it. I was kind of on the outside looking in, but like that woman, she needed help. She asked me a question. I gave her an answer. She's not the only stranger who stopped me on the street. And it's just like, can I ask you a question? Now, like, I've been readings for the public since like 2017. And I have my own clientele where people come to get readings, that come to help. And even in that context, I have spiritual experiences of like, the ancestors come through. They tell me certain things. They tell me to pass on messages for like, the client's family. They give me tips on how to spiritually like remedy some of the things that like clients are dealing with. So my majority of my experiences are absolutely in the context of being like in spiritual service to other people. And I take that role very seriously.
So I have a question, because I'm like, oh, am I not just in tune enough? Am I not quiet enough? Am I not tapped in enough? Do you feel like everybody has the capacity to have these spiritual experiences and it doesn't have to be as strong or as direct as what you and Yadira just said, or Roberta, you say you went to a person to experience these, and then you gave an example of where you also feel like you have these downloads. Do you feel like everybody has the capacity to do that? And if so, what is that barrier that is keeping them from being able to experience that?
I feel like everyone has the capacity, but everyone doesn't have the need. And that's just me saying that now. It's just like someone who spiritually serves his community. Like all of us have the capacity to learn how to like mend a broken bone, but do we need to? No, there may be some people who absolutely need to fulfill that role because that's a part of their destiny. Like that's what they signed up in this lifetime to do. And I feel like thanks to the social mediaification of like religion and spirituality, it's just like everybody's a spiritual guru and you get it downloaded, you can download it, you can just and it's just like
feel like that.
Like even back in the day, you know what I'm saying? Before there was social media, like everybody want a healer. Like everybody want laying hands. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody want blessing homes. Everybody want birthing babies. Everybody, you know what I'm saying? So like,
right.
I feel like because of social media and like what Roberta said earlier, because like things have just become like very trendified, it makes it seem like everyone is supposed to play this like spiritual, mystical role. And specifically in the context of like service, that's how I kind of look at things. Like everybody is not a healer. And in this lifetime, I'm telling you, the people who are out here spiritually healing people, they will tell you in a heartbeat, if I could have not done this, I would have turned, the calling down. Because it is an obligation. Like it is legit a job. Like it's a pact that you make to whoever is like guiding your healing journey or healing practice. But I would say for the people who need to employ some level of spirituality because they are like healers in this lifetime, yeah, they have that skill and they kind of need to do it. But everyone has the capability, but everybody don't have the need.
I agree with that, but I'll also say that I don't think that type of connection to spirituality, it doesn't have to be of service, right? You could have the capacity and it could be just for your own personal whatever, like your spirit guides or whatever you want to call,
Yep.
like could be communicating just to help you or protect you. Like it doesn't
Yep.
have to be. And that's one frustrating thing of like when I was with my ex, with Michael, and I was telling him about these downloads, right? And I would just be sharing. He was like, you need to lean into that. You know, you could help other people. And I was just like, to me, that was exploiting. Like it just didn't seem right. It just like, as soon as he said it, I was just like, ooh, that just doesn't feel good to me.
But I feel like that's because it was your download, not anybody else's. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like
And-
if the download was like for you to pass on the message, then
Right.
yeah.
And
you
I've
know.
actually received like certain downloads or whatever you want to call it of like, don't share this, bitch. Like this is for you.
Yep. Yep. That's
I
real.
don't, and not even share it as like, oh, this is an example. Like, no, this is for you. Because I feel like the thing that I had to parse out, or thing that I did parse out, was that if I did share this particular piece of information, it would offset something in a weird way that didn't need to be offset. So I say that to say that I think that and it probably is a part of just my belief system in the fact that I think we're all energy and we're all spirits and we're all here on the same plane. We just can't register it all the same way. That I think we all do have the capacity. It's just, I think part of it is not a need. A part of it, you'll receive it whenever you need to get it, if you need to get it.
Yeah.
A part of it is, I do think, and one thing that I've noticed about my personal experiences is that I only have the capacity, I guess, when I'm still and when I'm really practicing my meditation and when I'm really centering myself and not caught up in the spin of everything. Like I haven't had a quote unquote download in probably like a year because I've been maybe not a year, but like I haven't been still enough,
Right.
And so I think even that I think is by design. Because it's not my time, it's not my place to.
I agree with everyone has the capacity. And I'm going to say, because I felt like a spiritual orphan when I decided not to go back to the church, I took it upon myself to foster my spiritual connection. And I feel like that's where most of these experiences came about, right? So I think anyone that has the curiosity or feels that kind of inkling or, they can lean into that. And like Roberta says, it was through meditation. It was through quieting your mind and trying to connect. Not like I'm trying to connect to the spirit out here. No, like just trying to center yourself.
Where are
and
you?
go in silence everything else, right? Like having that moment for yourself. And I think that that's how I started being even more connected and feeling like I could hear and be more perceptive. So I would say if you're curious, if this is something that is a question in your mind, then you definitely have the capability to have those kind of spiritual connections.
Yeah. And I do. Like, I think I agree with you. When I am quiet, when I am contemplative, like quiet, like going within myself, right? And just not even expecting anything, but just coming with it. There's just this knowing. Like sometimes you don't even have to express that there is something either bothering you or that you need to work out. Just sitting quietly and praying or talking to God, like it is to me most clear when I am still, right? When I am still and I'm not trying to solve, because I am a solver.
You're a thinker.
I am a thinker, and it is important for me to turn off my brain and just be, right? And not try to process. And even you probably have noticed in this conversation, I'm like, no, explain that to me. Now, why? Because I'm trying to make sense of it. And so I do think that, to me, I feel closest when I am quiet. It's always like super emotional, but then you walk away feeling cleansed and you feel better, right? Somehow. So I guess those would be my spiritual connections, even though I'm not seeing my ancestors. So I have put on my reading glasses because I have some Bible verses sent to me that really are topical to what we're discussing today. Based on everything that we talked about, and we talked about a lot of different things, when you hear, and I'll just read a couple. I'll read First Deuteronomy 18, verses 10 through 12. This is the NIV version. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium or a spiritualist who consults with the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Dang, detestable. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5. For the living know they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Now I want to keep reading. John 14:6. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to me, to the Father, except through me. And then Exodus chapter 40, verse 9. Taking the anointing oil, anoint the tabernacle and everything in it, consecrate it and all its furnishings, and it will be holy. My coworker and I were talking about rituals, right? And I was like, well, Christianity has rituals, like too. Like we were talking about hoodoo and Christianity. And I was like, obviously the biggest one is taking communion. There are others, speaking in tongue. There is blessed oil or anointing oil that people use. Like, how are those things different, or how do you see those as different? And then the last one she has here is Psalms 23:5. You anoint my head with oil and my cup overflows. So to me, obviously those are all from the Bible. I guess the thing that I find interesting about Bible verses is singular Bible verses is that there is no context, right? There is no, what was the rest of the story?
What motivated that
what else is
assessment?
happening, and who wrote it?
Right.
That's that's why I want to read it, because I'm just like, well, who are these people who wrote the Bible, and who chose their writings, and and I'm sure they wrote more than what's present in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Who picked these writings? And this is where I feel like a lot of pastors fall down if they haven't studied the Bible, like if they haven't studied in the educational system, or had some
religion,
some historical right teachings about where the Bible comes from, because those are the kind of questions I have. Well, if God himself did not, he was certainly capable of doing that. He sent down the 10 Commandments. Where's the rest of the Bible? And so that was my first thought, is like, okay, what is the context of these? And then there's like Old Testament versus New Testament, and if you wildin'.
It might be a download, answer it.
All right, go. Who wants to go next? How do you see those?
Honestly, I just kind of tell people that, like, in America, we have a such thing as religious freedom. So by law, people are protected and can believe and practice whatever religion they want to. And then second, your religion is your religion. So, like, anytime you feel like you got to tell me how I should act based on your religion, you kind of missing the point, player. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Your religion is your religion. In terms of like cherry picking, you know what I'm saying, and like nitpicking certain things out of the Bible, like you could turn a couple of pages and read a story about how Solomon had to consult a prophet of the dead to like learn something that like, none of his other prophets could tell him. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, in terms of the like, you find what you go looking for. But I'm with you, like context is important. And with something like the Bible, like we don't just need general context. We need historical context. We need social context. We need like gender role context. We need economic, like it's just like so much that I feel like is purposefully overlooked. Mm-hmm. And just to bring it back full circle, like that type of behavior or that type of relationship with religion has turned a lot of people off, which is why like a lot of this Bible thumping today, like it don't have the same effect that it did back in the day.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say I agree with the historical context. To me, it is so important to understand that context, especially when we're reading the Old Testament, because that's the whole point as Christians. Like Jesus came to undo a lot of that stuff. So why do we want to put a lot of that old stuff pre-Jesus on people today? This is why I'm a red letter Christian, because I want to hear the words of Jesus to me have more weight than who wrote it, what was their agenda, their perception, their gender, the cultural norms back in the times. So, I think that there's a difference with that. And then when it comes to the dead, and rituals, let's say. We just celebrated Easter. Jesus died. There were rituals around his body, right? And when he resurrected, he was walking among us and he was talking to people. So why would we say, well, that dead person...
And that's a singular experience. And no other experiences exist after that.
My critical thinking brain has an issue with that.
Roberta? I see that eyebrow. It's up.
No, I mean, I agree. Like, I think it's well, don't get me started on the actual Bible and Jesus. I agree. I don't think you can pick and choose. But I personally don't believe any of that anyway. I don't know how we want to get into that, but.
You don't believe any of what? The Bible?
Bible.
That it happened, or you don't put any?
I think, well, let me just say it flatly what I think. I think Christianity started as a cult. I think it was, very fanatical, very like a cultish. It just,
some people do believe that.
Yeah, I mean, and I believe, Jesus was a man, lived a long time ago, did some things. But I don't necessarily think that it was too much different than, like, you know what I mean? Like other human thought processes of things of how we should move through the world and be and act and live. I think it was how, it came to be of the whole Bible and all the things that came from that. I think a lot of probably more influence from man and men since his time than his actual existence and what he accomplished during his life.
So obviously I believe that Jesus was here, died for our sin. I believe that. When it comes to, and so I can appreciate what Yadira is saying about, well, what did Jesus say? Because honestly, that's what I would like to look at too.
Yeah.
Because if that is the example, I want to go by what he's telling us to do. Because them other people, I literally don't know them, but also I don't know them people. Like, were they humans just like us? Because if so,
well, so I'm saying, like, all these people, like, we're human. Did we have anything to say otherwise? Other than the book that they wrote?
Right. I mean, we probably sat to scholars. We probably sound real like,
right.
Know nothing.
Like, I'm right.
And we don't.
Sure.
We do not know anything. Please don't take our podcast mics away. We are having discussions. We are having a discussion.
But these are the discussions that everyone is having. And unfortunately, they're not getting answers. Like, you do have some churches and some pastors who refuse to have these types of discussions with people. Yeah. Like, man, it's a documentary I watched a while ago. Can I remember the name? I'll send it to y'all. But it basically, like, the whole documentary was about how young people, black people, had questions about religion. Had questions about Christianity. So, they have a question about something, you got to be paying attention to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's something in you that is invested in it, but they just couldn't get answers. And they had really good questions. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like we have kind of been talking around this whole idea of, like, control and how organized religion just kind of, like, basically is built on control and forcing people to believe certain things in a certain way. And a lot of people, like, they're pushing back on that controlling aspect of it.
Yeah. I think
I think if you, for me, it was very clear when I had the realization that, Christianity was here before colonization. Like, we Black people in Africa and the Middle East were practicing Christianity, right? What Jesus left us, before Christianity was used to control.
As a term. Right. Well, before it was even called Christianity.
Right. As a tool, because it was the priests that enslaved the first people. So when I realized there was a relationship with the Creator, there was knowledge of Jesus way before it was, in my eyes, bastardized and used for evil, then that in my spirit said, okay, then let's go back and then learn what Jesus intended, what God intended way before humans meddled with it.
There's a little more truth to that, though, because I agree. And I used to have a cousin of mine. She was like, well, Christianity existed in Egypt, and I'm proud to be a Christian. And I'm just like, hey, baby, our ancestors are from Western and Central Africa, and Christianity was brought to them. You're thinking about Ethiopians, and your ass is not Ethiopian. You know what I'm saying? So, like, for one, Africa's huge.
The hugest.
Like the hugest,
Well,
the largest,
second.
you know what I'm
Second.
saying? Like,
Second
what's
largest.
second? You know what I'm saying? But like, you know.
Shouldn't have
So
that.
in terms of like religious practice and spiritualities, voodoo got a good 10, 12,000 years on top of Christianity. There are like other religions that like dwarf Christianity in terms of being like the oldest. So how I look at it is like I could, yeah, if I'm black and I want to be a Christian, that's cool. But also, if I'm black and I want to go back to like my spiritual heritage, which is like religions and practices that my ancestors practiced long before they were forced into Christianity, I have that right too. I also have the right to fuse the two, to combine the two. You know what I'm saying? If I want to. So I just wanted to share that quickly, you know, because like Christianity is like what 2,200 years old. There are religions out here people are still practicing today that are like 15,000 years old.
I feel like you're that Chinese person who was like, all right, United States, y'all been around for 200 years.
Exactly right. You only been
We've
here for 200
been here for
years.
thousands of years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we'll continue to be here.
Right.
Like, dang. I think that when it comes to, like, you know, my coworker, well-meaning, it was on her heart to send these things to me. But, you know, I think that one of the things that makes me, you know, hesitant about Christianity is because, you know, there is so much focus on, you know, what comes after, or the life that God has waiting for us after, that, you know, it reminds me of that quote, you're so heavily minded that you're no earthly good.
Yeah.
I feel like that is what happens, and that is why Christianity is, or religion in general. Well, no, I'm gonna just say Christianity because not all religions are the same, but it can be used for such evil so easily because it does. It's like, no, focus over here, focus over. Nope, all of the answers are with God, and He will tell you those after you pass away and you meet Him. And it's like, that is not satisfying to me.
Well, that's also why I personally don't romanticize suffering, and I don't try to center suffering into like, you know, being religious or some type of like, I don't know, is the word piety? I don't know, because like, who suffered more than fucking black people? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you mean to tell me one, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm black, or like Latin, you know what I'm saying? Or like Hawaiian. And then on top of that, I got to participate in Palestinian. And then on top of that, I got to participate in a religion that has me suffer more.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that sentence where you said you don't couple suffering with religion? Or
because I feel like suffering is, in the context of the world as we know it now, has just been used to like keep people controlled and complacent. Like, so your whole point about being so heavenly bound, but like earthly, you know, like no good, whatever, I'm like screwing that. I do feel like, yeah, like you get people so caught up in romanticizing the nobility of suffering and being a good Christian because your crown has already been like paid for. Meanwhile, I'm like, hey girl, we gotta fight for these rights. You know what I'm saying? Because like they out here killing us. Like they defunding our neighborhoods. Elon is building plants in like our neighborhoods, poisoning people. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like and these are very extreme examples. And like, you know, and I'm very aware of that. However, like they do kind of illustrate a pattern of how black people sometimes have been taught to just be okay with poor circumstances. And that religion is supposed to help you endure the suffering instead of like activating the blessings and the authority that God has given you to improve your life and your circumstances.
Yes.
But like, I don't feel like the powers that be want to have that conversation because like, then it takes it away from religion into like power structure. And like, it's very difficult for like the church, be it the Catholic Church or the Protestants, whoever, to not look like the huge institutions that they are in this dynamic. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's just like me. I have never, you know, and I don't disagree with Buddhists, but I'm just like, being a black man from black people in the United States of America, I would never glorify suffering. And especially in my religious and spiritual walk.
And suffering is, I mean, I think the most prevalent example of that is Job, right? In the Bible.
Yeah.
Like,
And people love Job. They're honored. They are honored when shit ain't going well. And they're just like, well, if Job could do it, then I could do it too. And it's like, hey, baby, Job suffered for like specific reasons. You're suffering because of institutionalized racism and wage discrimination and like medical discrimination and environmental racism and like really shitty politicians. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is all stuff you can change today. You don't have to get swallowed up by this well. You can change this tomorrow.
Or the people that wouldn't want to go to college because Jesus was coming. So.
Yes.
Wait, what?
Oh yes, when I was young, there were people that believed college would be a waste of time because Jesus was coming soon. And we needed to be more focused on church things than earthly things. And
isn't that like the main thing of like Jehovah's Witness? Like, and then like part of it, like they just didn't participate in some of the things because there's no point, because
perhaps it is for the same belief. I am grateful, and I have to make this parenthesis, that my parents were so focused on education that was not a belief in my household, even though some folks in my church did believe that.
Interesting. All right, Roberta, where do we go from here in our outline, which we have completely obliterated?
I know. I mean,
I thought it was a loose outline anyway. Though,
it is
right?
very,
so, like,
very
loose. You're good.
Yeah.
The part I think it was the beginning, middle, and end, right? And so the end part is the future piece. And the question I had, and we kind of sort of talked about it, but like, what is it as we age? What is it about our faith that is shifting, and for what reason? If it is shifting, is it because we're getting closer to the end of our life? And or are there pieces for those of us who have children and have very concrete legacies? Or is there something in the faith, in religion, in the way we practice that we want to carry on to the next generation? And if so, what is that, and for what reason?
Don't start with me. Yadira.
Yeah, okay. So, what is important to me today and to pass on to my children is to know God. That has never changed, right? Like, that was on my list of things I was looking for a partner before I met Elvin, was he has to know and serve God, because it was important for me to pass on that legacy to the children. Now, what has changed, or how that definition looks like today, is how are we as a family and as individuals that are part of this family demonstrating to be a living, intangible demonstration of love towards one another? Because we're not in this world alone. And as Christians, we are intended to be God's love here on earth for another human being, right? Like, that's what I want them to understand that Christianity is. Right. And that looks like service trips. That looks like caring for a friend, standing up for a friend, standing up for people that are being abused, marginalized. Right. Like, it looks like so many different things in their lives today. But that to me is the legacy. That to me is Christianity.
I feel like, and I've been thinking about this, and I feel like my legacy is going to be for the broader community. Like, I've been very transparent across social media about my transition from Christianity, like into hoodoo, and then like back to like some type of hybrid model. And then also like being very forthcoming about like my spiritual experiences, and like, you know, how I feel like if you have spiritual gifts and if you're called to help people, then you should be helping people, because like God creates healers and God places healers on the earth. And I feel like the older I get, the more I appreciate the practicality of spirituality. And that is like, if something ain't right, if something ain't going right, I know how to get it right. You know what I'm saying? If something ain't moving, I know how to get it moving. If somebody needs help, I know exactly how to help them. And a lot of people don't get that from organized religion. Like, I remember a gentleman called me, and he got my number from like a cousin or whatever. And he was just like, I am at a crossroads in life and I need some type of guidance. And someone recommended he speak to me. And I was like, well, what have you done to sort of like get answers? Because I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers. And he said he went to church. And I was just like, well, what did the pastor tell you? And he was like, well, he told me to join the church.
See.
And like, unfortunately, a lot of people like go to religion with like very real, like practical problems and they don't get any answers. So that's why I feel like, you know, the older I get, the more I just appreciate the practicality of being a spiritual person. And in terms of like legacy, like I don't have children, but I have a lot of people who just like listen to what I have to say about hoodoo and about Black spirituality and about religion, and I study like Black beliefs and Black spiritual communities. And I just kind of feel like that if I just continue to do this work, like more people are going to have answers that they are looking for, but also create community so they don't feel alone in trying to search for these answers. And if I can do that, and I will do that, like when I do that, like I would know I would have done what God wanted me to do in this lifetime.
I guess you want me to go, Roberta. Your continued silence. Saying go. In terms of what I see for the future, I think what's important to me is using or understanding God as a reflection of or as a part of who I am. Like, how do I become more of myself by being connected to God? Is that solidifying my values, solidifying my morals, solidifying who I am as a person? I want people to see and know God through me, right? Like, I want that to be exhibited in how I behave and how I treat people, and how I raise my kids. For my kids specifically, you know, they are 13 and 14. What I would like for them to get from being spiritual is that they can tap into it. Like, how do they use spirituality to give them strength, to give them faith, right? Being able to tap into the source of God in order to help you make decisions. And to me, it is like developing who you are as a person and being able to lean on that. When I'm not here, when, you know, or their dad is not here, who do you tap into? And to me, part of knowing God is knowing yourself. Like, when you know him, at least this is how I feel, then you are more connected to who you are. But it is important to me that they know that there is a God, that he is powerful, and you can access him, right? You can tap into that. Like, there is something to be gained from that relationship.
Do you hope they get baptized at some point, Sonia?
They've never been baptized. But I also strongly believe that you should make a decision to be baptized. Like, I don't know, because, you know, the way we grew up, you got baptized when you were 5. And if you chose to, you can get baptized when you were, well.
Oh, no.
A christening is different than a baptism.
Yeah, like I was not baptized until I was able to make my own decision. So at 13 is when I got baptized. And I want the same for my children, but they haven't made the decision. So my children are baptized.
I definitely believe the decision of being baptized and understanding, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean to you? And why do you want to do it is important. I was baptized, but I have no memory. I don't even know if anybody asked me. I thought it was a part of being a part of the church. You join the church, next week you get baptized. Every second Sunday or this Sunday, you baptize new people.
I got baptized like 3 times in my life.
Yeah, I think I feel like you could, because there are adults who get baptized too.
Can't you just put some holy water in a water balloon and walk up behind Hunter and be like, you know, like, in the name.
I just go over and pray for them.
Yeah.
Pray for
them.
That
works.
Spare the water.
Well, for me, I don't have a legacy, like, for real.
You don't have a legacy.
You do have a legacy.
Yeah, I'm like,
right.
You have a legacy.
I don't
Please
have.
don't make this another hour, because why we gotta explain to you why you got a legacy.
Particular, like, in the most literal sense,
you
right?
I have children.
I don't have, right. I don't have, in the most literal sense, right? I don't have children, a legacy. I don't have.
That's not a legacy. You got motherfuckers with kids, and they don't have no legacy. Kids don't equate to legacy.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm taking it all the way across the spectrum of, like, from the most literal, like, kids, I don't have that legacy, but I also don't have people that, like, look to me for any sense of wisdom or anything, like, in that regard. Like, I don't have anything of like, that kind of, I don't live that way. So for me, spirituality as I age is more about understanding myself and my place. And so for when it does come to the point of transition, that I understand how I'm connected, I'll still be connected to all things and souls and spirits in my network. And I mean, and to some extent, I do the way my definition of purpose and life purpose has changed because of my spirituality. And so how I define purpose now, I used to take influence of like your purpose is your work, your life's work, and like, oh, and I don't believe that anymore. I never really believed it, but I definitely don't believe it now. I think purpose comes in all the small human interactions that we have. I find purpose in, somebody could smile at someone and that impacts their world in a different way and sets off this whole chain reaction of events that benefits their life. Like that, to me, that is a purpose. I think we all have hundreds, if not thousands of them. And so I've just become more keenly aware of those interactions. And so, and I don't even honestly think it takes intention. I think a lot of those things happen on accident. But yeah, it's just become more of in my awareness. And yeah, it causes me to move through the world differently, a lot lighter. And yeah, that as I age and knowing the unpredictability of the human side of things, it just gives me more of a ease and a peace. But yeah, I don't have a sense of legacy or continuity once I'm not here in human form anymore.
Mm-hmm.
As far as you know, that could change tomorrow. You don't know what God
It
has
could.
planned for you.
But I was just like, millions of people live and die, and we don't know who they are. But does that mean that they were any less?
I wouldn't say any less. It's just that they don't have a legacy.
Yeah, and I also think legacy is I feel like there's some capitalism wrapped up in there. Like that legacy is a tangible thing, right? Legacy can be stories that people pass on, or when people talk about you and you're no longer here.
Right.
Like that could be legacy. It doesn't.
Right, but I also don't think that I have had or had like that much significance that people will talk about me in any significant way once I'm not here.
If the girl feel like she don't have no legacy, then she ain't got no legacy.
I don't.
She'll find out when she's on the other side when we over here talking about her.
Yeah.
And look, and we can be like, she ain't do nothing.
Right.
And her whole life, that girl, she ain't done a damn thing. Just
I
here
drink some
and
good
drink
wine because
Just
there was
give
a
up some
reporter in my
space.
life.
Right.
She created some life with these damn trees, but that's about it.
So I have a question. With Roberta, you talked about like a reincarnation coming back as you don't go like if we come back as something else, we're coming back in the future as we know it as the future. You won't be like reincarnate back to the Civil War. You don't reincarnate. Is this a dumb question?
No,
it's not. It's a very interesting question.
No, it's a very interesting question because like you think of like, yeah, different realms and platforms of energy, right? Then time is
like
wrapped
the
into
multiverse.
that, and like, yeah, and did all these things coexist at the same time? Potentially, maybe. I don't know. I don't have the answer, so I don't disbelieve that, but I don't believe it. Sure, possible.
In some African traditions and religions, they feel like we are like reincarnated ancestors, and like people would tell you that like they realize in a past life they were like so and so, or like there's books written. There's one called Of Water and Spirit, I think, by Patrice Malidoma Some, and basically like he records or tells his whole initiation process until like the religion of like his tribe. I forgot what country they were from, like in Africa. I feel like he was a Sangoma. I don't know, to get me wrong, but basically like he talks about through the initiation process, like learning why he was so close with his grandfather because he was his grandfather's brother reincarnated. So like from an ancestral perspective, like it kind of continues to pay forward, not necessarily go back, because those lives have already been lived. Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it would have to have a different name, not reincarnation. It would have to go back incarnation.
Yeah. Right.
All right, Roberta.
Retro-carnation.
Oh my God, guys. This has been a great conversation. It's been a marathon for us completely. So to end this conversation, we always end with a CTA. Yadira, Emmanuel, what would you like to leave with the listeners?
I would like for folks to find a living in tangible way to be the demonstration of love towards somebody else. One of the ways that I learned this is through the book The Politics of Jesus by Aubrey Hendricks, because he pointed out how Jesus was stopped many times on his way to preaching or on his way to doing something. And for Jesus, people's needs were holy. That's why he stopped. So to me, like after I learned that, I'm like, I've lived my life understanding that people's needs are holy. And if Jesus could stop for that, then that's a priority in my life as well.
Amazing. Emmanuel?
I love that. Who do practitioners, CTA, cleanse that house, mop them floors, sweep them corners, open the windows, let that fresh air in, light a candle, relax in your space, prepare a space for your blessings.
Mine is kind of similar. I would say to be still. So take some moments to just be still, clear your mind, literally be quiet. And if you meditate, lean into your practice.
And I guess mine will be that continue to ask questions. Continue to be curious. Follow your curiosity. I probably asked some dumb questions in this podcast, but find people who love you, who will not judge you, and continue to scratch your curiosity. And that could be in conversation, that can be in books, but continue to ask questions. And that's it. If you hung in there, thank you for hanging in there with us, and we will see you next time.